We always read about malicious ghost stories. What's your friendly ghost story? When I was 18, I was attending university and renting a room in an old house a few blocks off campus. Only one other room in the house was rented, and the girl who lived there spent most nights at her boyfriend's place. I basically had the entire house to myself. I would estimate that it was built sometime between 1910 and 1920 based on the style and neighborhood, but I could be wrong. I did know it was 100 years old at the time and the oldest home I've ever had. It was my first time living alone, and since it was such a big, empty space, I spent most of my time in my room behind a locked door. It wasn't super creepy or anything, but at night, when I was alone, I tended to avoid leaving my room unless absolutely necessary. It had the same uneasy feeling of turning off the basement light and then running up the stairs as fast as you could in the dark, not for any real reason, but it made your heart race anyway. Near the end of my first semester, I contracted influenza A. I'd been pretty fortunate with my physical health up until then, and it was the sickest I'd ever been in my life. I could barely peel myself out of bed to go to the bathroom or to feed myself. I was incredibly weak, my whole body ached, and I was running a very high fever. I actually developed arthritis in my joints as a symptom, which I didn't even know was possible. I remember waking up with a puddle of sweat collected in the hollow of my throat at one point. It was absolutely disgusting. A few days into the ordeal, I woke up to find an elderly man sitting by the side of my bed. There was no chair there, but he was very obviously in a seated position. For some reason I didn't react with shock at all. I was completely unafraid. I asked him what he was doing there, and he simply said, "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." I must have fallen back asleep, because that's all I remember of the visit. This could easily have been a New York quill-induced dream or a fevered hallucination, but to me it was absolutely real. He was there, and he spoke to me, and I felt very comforted by his presence. A few months later, I had a friend of mine from another school come to visit for a weekend. We did some exploring of the house and found a hatch to the basement. It was filled with old tools and hardware, but one thing stood out to me for no apparent reason. On the wall was a medicine cabinet absolutely stuffed with old pill bottles, regular things like Anacin and other old brand names I had to look up. It also contained many prescription pill bottles that were too faded to read. For some reason, as soon as I saw them, my elderly visitor came to mind. I wondered if maybe he had some experience caring for a sick relative and came to visit me when I was ill because it was a familiar situation. I did ask the landlord about previous occupants, but they had purchased the house only a few years earlier and didn't know much. I suppose I'll never know.